afternoon. Welcome to Foys on Facebook. This isn't a regularly scheduled show. Our show last week was canceled because we got the Poland container in, and a lot of stuff that some of you guys have been waiting on. We received. We got the. What did we get? We got the Poland. We got the gray floor grills that everyone's been waiting on. Also, the small coconut nest pads and the plastic nest boxes that we've been out of those for quite a while. So we have those all back in stock. Keep in mind that show season is right around the corner. So if you want to order those big, heavy items, bulky stuff, while we go to the show, place that order. We can bring them to the show. That way you don't have to pay shipping on them. It'll save you a lot of money. So our first show is going to be in Fremont, Ohio next month. You can start pre-ordering now. If you have any question, you can give us a call. You can talk to anybody who answers the phone, be it Kim, Sherry, or myself. We don't have auction this week because this isn't a regular show. We did have the auction last week, and we want to thank everybody who does participate in the auction. The NPA Legacy Fund Trust also thanks you. It does a lot of good for the hobby. If you're not a member of the NPA, make sure you sign up. And if you don't know how to do that, you can always call and ask us. You can call Jerry, myself, Kim, or Sherry. So this week's show, we have a special guest, as you all know, and he has arrived. So I'm going to let Jerry introduce him.
Hi, Gina.
Hi. Welcome back from vacation.
Oh, thank you. It was a great one.
I know it was.
But when I got back, I had 100 calls. So if I haven't spoke to you, I think I caught all of them. But anyways, I'm here to introduce, first of all, a really good friend of mine. Ockert and I have been friends now, I think, 8 years or something like that. So in introducing him, I want you to know that all of you folks have used Avio products and complimented us on the products and complimenting us in the way the products go together. I'm having I would, if I weren't on TV, I'd say brain fart, but I don't think I'm allowed to say that, okay? So
you're allowed to say anything, Jerry. If I know you're allowed to, and you do anything you want to do.
Right.
Well, at my age, I forget things. We were talking about this. We just had dinner.
What did we
lunch.
talk about again?
I don't have my hearing aids in, but Ockert and I are brothers. We're just not related, but we are definitely brothers. And when it comes, I guess what I'm beating around the bush with, Ockert, I can't remember your last name. So we got to push you a little bit closer.
Let's closer. There we go.
Ockert Botha from South Africa. His good-looking wife is with us also. She's behind the scenes. She's actually filming some of this product. Let's just talk a little bit about our history, because the Aviomed product is a complete line of products made specifically for pigeons, and they are the biggest selling product line that we have, bar none. And Ockert is the one that's formulated all of these products over the years. I think you've read about them in our catalog. We got together, I think, 8 years ago, Ockert?
Well,
10 years ago?
It could even be longer, Jerry. You know, time flies, and I think it was about 10, maybe 10, 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And there's a reason that Gina is in the middle, because when Ockert and I get together, we can't stop clowning around and having a good old time. And so Gina said, I'll sit in the middle and try to control you folks. So I guess the benefit for you folks is Ockert is a veterinarian. What's the word? You're the chief veterinarian you're number one all the way up to the top veterinarian?
Well, I don't know if you can say that. I've certainly specialized in pigeons all my life, and I've spent a whole lot of time research and lecturing all over the world. So it's one of my real specialities and real interests in life.
And a love.
And love, absolute love. I flew pigeons with my dad. I actually started keeping racing pigeons, in particular Medinas and Norwich croppers. We had them, and that was in giving my age away. That was around about 1972. Round
We
about
were
that
probably
stage.
the same age.
Yeah. No, Jerry, you are. You look younger than I, but I mean, you're a few years. You give me a few years. So it's a passion that I had since kid, and then when we actually moved to a town called Carltonville in South Africa, we started racing pigeons there, and we raced pigeons for about 10 years. And when I was at university, I did some research, even in my student days, and registrations of products. I basically started the company MedPet, which many of you guys would know very, very well as well, very well represented in America. I started that company and made 95% of the products they still own today, and they're marketing today. Registered all of them, and then I basically sold that. And a few years later, we started Aviomed. So that's a very short synopsis of. But the bottom line is that the passion is there, and I think what makes Aviomed different is the fact that we're constantly innovating. That there is just, as science progresses, and as I do research, I spend a heck of a lot of time on doing research, be it on pigeons or dogs or whatever. But as things progress, you've got to move with the times, and you've got to understand that some of the products will become outdated. And I think I see Gina's just made a note here about something that we've just brought back, because that's also something, and I don't want to ramble on, but something that's very important to remember, that sometimes products that tend to fall out of fashion, because they're not used so regularly, they become more potent and more active against in their function.
The opposite side of that is Ronadazole.
Absolutely.
It was used so often that it's not as effective as it used to be without doubling the doses.
Exactly. So you've got to innovate, whether you're bringing back old products and changing them and reformulating them, or whether you're doing new formulations with new products. To me, that's the important thing. You can't just have products that have been there for 10 or 20 years and just ride them and carry on with them. So I think that's important.
Gina, are we going to be able to take questions for Dr. Botha?
Yes.
Would you tell them how to do that?
They know. Y'all know, right?
See what she does to me. I make a suggestion and she's
already done.
They know.
Please ask questions.
Rona, would you hand me my water? This probably isn't good for Facebook, but before the show I went to the bathroom, and I forgot to zip up my fly. Excuse me.
Do you want some water, Dr. Botha?
I do. Thank you very much. You see now why I say it's impossible.
I felt the breeze.
Impossible to travel with, but my greatest of greatest friends. It really is just the most amazing thing to be back. And just maybe I can tell them quickly, part of the reason why we're back in America again is that my daughter stays in Louisville, and she actually stays in Shelbyville, but she shows horses and trains horses in Louisville. So she had the World Championship horse show last week, and I'm very, very proud to say that one of the horses that she trained came in as a world champion 4-year-old horse. So we're extremely proud of her. And it was just awesome to meet up with her, to visit her. And I thought, look, there's no way we're going to be here and not come and visit you. So we actually surprised him, and I was very concerned that he would have a heart attack. Thank God that never happened.
I've had one of those.
Yeah.
I don't want another one.
But it's like two brothers seeing each other after 6 years. Really great. So it's wonderful to be.
Well, I was a little bit suspicious. You tell him.
Jerry had no idea that him and his wife were coming. So we had this planned for a couple of weeks while they were on vacation. And Kim and I had told Jerry today when he came in that we had to have a meeting with the three of us, and he didn't have a clue what it was. So
but I brought a notepad to take
sure
notes.
Did.
And then if I may, Jerry, just before I go on with the show, or we take some questions, I just need to perhaps give a bit of background also about Aviomed and my wife Sana's involvement.
In the new product.
And the new product, exactly.
Go ahead.
So effectively, when I sold MedPet and when I retired from MedPet, in about 2 years or so after that, Sana started. We developed some products, and she started the company called Aviomed. And she literally is the owner of the company. She runs the company, and my only function is to basically be there in a supportive role on development of new products and technical inquiries and making sure that the product quality is there. So it's a real marriage made in heaven, in the sense that I'm not really good with finances, and she's very strict and good with the finances. And I must compliment her in the way that she's run the company for the last 12 years. It's been amazing. And it certainly helped me a lot to be able to also pursue some of my other business interests that I have. So, yeah. So, and I think in the end, maybe as we finish, we'll just ask her to come up and just say hi,
Mm-hmm.
so that
Absolutely.
at least people can see who the face behind the company is. Okay.
Yep. I forgot to say, go Steelers.
Okay. Well, why don't we offer this question to Ockert?
Okay, so I'll read the question.
Perfect.
What would you recommend for one-eye cold and respiratory illness? I just ordered Dr. Pigeon one drop one eye one time, and doxycycline powder.
I'm sorry.
Started with one, and now we have about 3 to 4 with the same symptoms. Should I treat the whole loft? Also, the 3 to 4 with illness is not eating. Any suggestions?
Okay, so is the question posted by Adra?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think, without giving a full lecture about respiratory disease, because it's really important to understand that respiratory disease is a disease complex, or a disease syndrome. It's not a one single disease. The easiest way to explain it is it's very, very much the same as human flu, in the sense that normally you have a virus, or otherwise a mycoplasm, that's the other type of germ, or otherwise the chlamydia, which is the third type of germ that initiates the disease. And then you get other bacterial infections coming in and actually makes the disease worse. Right. So it's super important to understand that not all respiratory diseases that look the same are the same. You really need to try and find out which are the causes of that disease. And it'll take much too long for me to try and explain the whole thing. But effectively, you've got mycoplasma that will basically cause the slime in the throat, although it can cause infection of the eyes and red eyes as well. And then you've got chlamydia. It's now called chlamydophilia, but we still, all of the pigeon fanciers, I think, refer to it as chlamydia. And we call that ornithosis, or one-eye cold. And then thirdly, you have herpes virus, or some of the other viruses that can also cause it. So in the pigeon, the mycoplasma and the chlamydia are actually the two main causes of respiratory disease. And what's super important again is that they don't respond to the same antibiotics and the same treatment. So if we look at the question as should I treat the whole loft, emphatically, definitively, yes. There is no way that if you have any one-eye cold or any respiratory disease in more than one or two pigeons in your loft, and especially if you find that it's there and then it disappears a little bit and it starts again, and they gradually, more and more pigeons start developing it, that you can just treat the sick birds, because they carry the disease and they will actually infect one another, and as time goes on, one after the other will actually become infected. So really, people, I want to caution very, very seriously in not treating just one or two or three the symptom birds in the loft. You've got to treat the whole loft. Okay, that's really important. You can use tablets, absolutely. You can use tablets or eye drops to treat the birds that are really very ill and to help them get over it faster. But you need to really treat the whole loft. The whole loft needs to be treated. And then it's really important to, as I say, to understand that the mycoplasma, we normally use the products called Thailand, or otherwise the product from Aviomed called Mycoban, or Spiromycin, which is in the Spirodox. So for mycoplasma, we use those. And then really exciting, at the end, I'll talk about the other new product that we've just basically sent you guys. So it would be those three: Thailand, Mycoban, or Spiromycin for the mycoplasma. If you've got chlamydia or the one-eye cold, doxycycline is by far the treatment of choice. And it's really important to understand that normal oxytetracycline or chlortetracycline is nowhere near as effective as doxycycline. It's the gold standard treatment. So the important thing is you've got to be using the correct dosage of doxycycline, and you don't want to underdose them. So it's important to follow the manufacturer's recommendations and just to look at the bottle and see what the percentage is. The higher the percentage of the product is, the obviously less you have to give. So it's very difficult for a pigeon fancier to say, do my birds have mycoplasma or do they have chlamydia or ornithosis? And that makes things really difficult in treatment. And you can't really differentiate which of the two it would be without doing very specialized tests.
Would it make sense then to treat with both?
Well, that's the beauty of the product that we've developed in Aviomed called Spiradox, because it's basically a combination of spiromycin, which will treat the mycoplasma segment, and doxycycline, which would basically treat the chlamydia segment.
And those are both water
Both
soluble.
water soluble. That's combined in one product. It's called Spiradox. And we do have a Spiradox tablet as well. So basically, the very ill birds can be treated separately. But you start off the treatment with Spiradox.
Would you segregate the very ill birds?
Yeah, very much so, definitely. Yeah. So the sooner you can segregate them, the moment they start showing symptoms, the sooner you can actually segregate them, the better for preventing the spread of the disease. It's very much the same as one person in a aeroplane having flu, and when you've flown 20 hours and you get back to South Africa or you get to America, 30 or 40% of the people that was on the plane will develop flu within the next few days. So the quicker you can take the carrier or the guy that's got the symptoms out of the equation, the better. Okay.
Another thing that we also always talk about is a lot of people, once they see their birds getting better, they stop medicating.
Great point.
How important it is to continue the full whatever 5-7 day treatment that it is.
Such a good point, and especially with respiratory disease, because this is a real pearl of wisdom that I want our listeners or the Facebook watchers to really tie a knot in their hankies or whatever. But they've got to remember this. So number one, you've got to be sure you're treating the right thing with the right medicine. But hugely important is the mycoplasma. The slime in the throat can actually be cured within 5 to 7 days with the correct treatment. But there is no way in the world that you can clear and cure chlamydia or ornithosis with a 5 or 7 day treatment. So if you've had the disease, the take-home message would then be that you would use Spiradox for 7 days and then carry on for another 14 days with Aviodox with a single doxycycline product alone. Because you've got to have at least 21 days. Many people, veterinarians, say 40 days, but we found that if you go with the right product at the right dosage, that 21 days is adequate to use. Okay. So that's the basis of respiratory disease. Would you like me to elaborate on the new product then?
No. Get you going. It's hard to just kind of wind it down. We got a few questions here.
So you wanted to say something?
I was going to ask you about combining the Spiradox with the Mycoban.
Okay, yes. No, that's not a good idea. Okay, and again, different medicines.
Oh, no, not combining.
Yeah.
Combining it with
bromhexine. Wonderful. Yeah. You see, she's as good as a vet, this one, any day, definitely. So yeah, very, very good point. The bromhexine is a very specific, what we call a mucolytic. In other words, it actually loosens up the phlegm in the respiratory tract. The moment you get an inflammation and infection in the respiratory tract, it becomes all phlegmy, and you with humans, you cough and you don't really produce anything. It's just this dry hacking cough. And basically, the moment you can get the phlegm to loosen up and actually move up the respiratory tract, it actually gives a big advantage. There are two other major advantages with bromhexine, in that it basically increases, and this has been proven scientifically. It's not just a thing, that we hope or think it happens. It's really scientifically been proven that bromoxine will increase the amount of antibiotic that actually goes into the lung tissue and into the little windpipes in the bronchi and the bronchioli. And then lastly, the very, very most important thing is the lung itself, the pipes of the lung, the little bronchi and bronchioli are on the inside. They have very, very small little fingers that we call villi that actually move like a wave of the ocean and carries the bacteria and the viruses back up so that it can actually be expelled. And the bromoxine actually stimulates this function. So it's a fantastic adjunct to treatment of any respiratory disease. Okay.
We have more questions, I think, than we've ever had, and that's because you're here. The first question, here's one from Joseph. This is very important. Gina, what size hat do you wear? See how we take all kinds of questions.
Amazing.
So what size hat do you wear?
I have no idea.
Well, Joseph, thanks for asking, but you may want to call Gina and ask her directly.
I can tell you she doesn't have we call a groot kop in Dutch. That means she's got a big head. The moment you become too important, you tend to get a big head. And she doesn't have a groot kop yet.
Ockert, why don't you answer this question? It's one we're getting fairly frequently now.
Yes, yeah.
Any vaccines available outside the USA for adeno?
Okay, it's my contention that currently I do not know of any vaccine that is effective, okay, in the sense that you've got to understand that the adeno is a really complex virus and really difficult virus to make a vaccine for. It is very important to realize that the adenovirus vaccine for chickens that is available in many countries, and I think in your country as well, I'm not 100% sure not, but they is not effective. It doesn't give enough cross immunity, so it actually has no effect in giving you immunity. I do think that possibly in Poland there is work being done on it, and that it is either available or it's available soon. But currently, I don't know of a really high quality product that is available.
Okay, there has been one coming out of Europe, shipped over here. I don't know much about it, but the concern I have is how do you ship a product, let's say from Belgium, to the USA, and be sure it was chilled properly? You know, I don't know if it's a killed or a dead, but every vaccine we ship is with ice packs.
Absolutely.
So how do they get a product from overseas to here and still be in the good condition it should be?
I think it's a brilliant point, and so often we get products from Europe or whatever, and from a vaccine standpoint. And vaccines aren't cheap. I mean, you know as well as I do, they're really hugely expensive. And it's important to understand that a live vaccine is absolutely useless if it's been at the wrong temperature. But people don't realize that even the inactivated vaccines are made and manufactured with very specific carriers and what we call adjuvants, which basically allows for the dead virus to be liberated into the bloodstream in a slow fashion, in a slow release fashion. And if those vaccines get beyond a temperature of 25 degrees for an extended period, 2 or 3 days,
degrees or 20
well, that's Celsius. Sorry,
yeah.
So you can equate. But if it gets warm, if it really gets too warm temperature, then it will start breaking down those adjuvants and breaking down the carriers. And over and above being able to sometimes getting abscesses when you use it, it can often be ineffective. Okay. So.
All right, Gina.
So our last show, we had talked about the garlic powder. So Michael was asking how it's working because you started using it in your loft.
Well, when you use something like garlic or other natural antibiotics, which people consider the garlic, you're not going to see a change over a few days or a week or 2 weeks. As I tell everybody, when you're taking any kind of a vitamin or a supplement, you have to continue it. You've got to keep doing it. It's like if you had a one-a-day vitamin capsule, if you don't take it every day, if you take it every other day, it's not going to do what it's supposed to do. So get back to me and maybe in a month, and if I see any noticeable change, hopefully I will, then we'll answer the question again then.
Okay, Jimmy asked, does Circo affect old birds or young birds or both? Circovirus.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, there's a real definitive answer on that in the sense that Circovirus is known to actually attack fast replicating cells. So that's where it actually needs to live or replicate itself. And essentially, it targets in the pigeon, it targets the immune cells, which is made in a completely different organ to anybody, to any other animal. Human beings and mammalians and dogs and cats, they have the thymus, which actually produces the immunity. In the pigeon, it's a little organ that sits just above the cloaca, above the opening where the feces and the urine is excreted inside the body. And that bursa, it's called the bursa of Fabricius. It's a terrible big name, but that's the little gland. And that actually makes the antibodies that actually does the protection, and that has the whole immune cascade, actually gets the whole immune cascade to function. It's really intricate to explain, but effectively the circovirus will target that bursa of Fabricius. And so essentially it's a disease of young pigeons. Okay, when they get beyond, and that varies a lot in different breeds and in different pigeons and different strains and different individuals, but when they get beyond 6 months of age, that bursa actually becomes smaller and smaller, and the general bone marrow and the rest of the organs like the spleen starts taking over the function. And the same thing happens with the thymus in humans. So effectively, if you're knocking out that immune system, it's going to be knocked out in the early stages of the bird's life. Okay, and maybe I can just take 2 minutes and say that this is so important in the vaccination of pigeons as well, in the sense of the vaccination of pigeons. If a pigeon is not correctly vaccinated against paramyxovirus, that period when it starts developing the young bird disease as a result of the circovirus actually gets far more important, because then once it develops a young bird disease, then the paramyxovirus, which is sometimes these days not that acute because pigeons have a good immunity, they don't have that immunity anymore, and they then develop the paramyxovirus, which causes permanent harm and damage. So circovirus, the good news is it's a young bird disease, but if they recover from it, they recover fully and they don't really have any long-term problems. Okay, whereas if a pigeon develops paramyxovirus, they will never be able to fly effectively again, or even breed more than 2 or 3 clutches per season.
Sherry, it's okay. You can make noise. Sherry's coming through with the mail going out, and she's trying to walk as quietly as possible. All right, our next question.
Which antibiotics used for paratyphoid do you recommend? Which antibiotics?
Jerry, would you like to say something?
Yeah,
Look,
there are a number of drugs that will treat paratyphoid, but and some people call it salmonella. When I first got into the business, sometimes the article would be about paratyphoid, and the next article was of salmonella, but they're the same thing. But in talking about treating it, there's only one antibiotic, if that's the correct word, treatment. You can tell me. Okay, is some people call it furazolidone, and the other one is furaltidone. They're basically the same drug. One is made in Germany, and the other one is formulated and shipped to us here in the United States. So the best drug you can possibly use is furazolidone or furaltidone. Pardon?
Typhoid cure.
And typhoid cure. Would you explain typhoid? I knew that. I just was wondering whether you would remind me. But I do thank you. Go ahead. And typhoid cure. Yeah.
Right, so I think it's exactly as Jerry says. The paratyphoid is the name for the disease caused by salmonella, and that's why people call it one or the other. I totally concur and agree with Jerry that the furazolidone groups are absolutely excellent antibiotics because there doesn't seem to be a lot of resistance against that antibiotic. The one thing that people need to understand is, unfortunately, furazolidone and furaltidone is not very well absorbed by a pigeon. So once the paratyphoid has actually gone into the organs, where it's gone beyond the intestinal phase of the disease, because we know it starts in the intestine and actually causes diarrhea. And in some cases, if you treat it early with furazolidone, it won't go into the septicemic stage or the blood, into the organ phase. Once it's gone into the organ phase, it becomes very, very difficult to actually get it out of those organs. And unfortunately, this paratyphoid organism does have the potential to develop resistance against antibiotics very, very quickly. So in the olden days, 10, 15 years ago, Baytril, enrofloxacin was the antibiotic of choice. A heck of a lot of paratyphoid organisms now has a resistance against Baytril, so you have to exactly what you said before, Jerry. The people kept on increasing the dosage. It started off with 1 milliliter per 2 liters of drinking water. Then they started with 1 ml per liter, 2 and 4 milliliters. And unfortunately, we know now that if you go to the higher doses, that it really causes a lot of side effects, such as infertility in the cocks, such as even damage in the joints, damage in some of the organs. So, enrofloxacin or typhoid that you're treating is effective, effective and sensitive to the enrofloxacin. So, in other words, that antibiotic, the Baytril, will kill that paratyphoid, and many times it doesn't do that anymore. The typhoid cure, when I developed that product, I looked at the whole disease holistically in the whole way the disease actually happens, and I said, yes, you've got to have furaltidone. We chose to use furaltidone because it's the better stability. It's the one that's more stable and it's more readily available. So the quality of that raw material is better than the older furazolidone one. It tends also to be more water soluble, so it does dissolve in water better than the furazolidone used to. So we used the furaltidone as the intestinal portion of it. And then we added a product called chloramphenicol, which is basically a very, very strong broad spectrum antibiotic. But although it's so strong in broad spectrum, it has very few side effects in pigeons. Pigeons can really take it in. And the beauty with chloramphenicol is that it gets into the organs very well. So it actually gets to where the bacteria is sitting very, very well. And then also we actually have antibiotic called amoxicillin or penicillin in there, because the beauty with that is that it kills very quickly. So whereas the chloramphenicol takes longer to actually heal the disease, amoxicillin will knock down the bacteria quicker, and then the chloramphenicol will take over. So I really am exceedingly proud of Typhoid Cure as, I think, the world leader in paratyphoid treatment still at the moment.
It's a feed. It goes on the pigeon's feed. Is that correct?
It goes feed as well as drinking water. Absolutely, yeah. So it all depends on what your management style is, but it does dissolve very well in the water, and it can go in the water. Just again, I think coming back to Gina's observation, again, please, pigeon fanciers, never ever treat paratyphoid if you want to treat it for 3 or 4 days. The minimum period of treatment for paratyphoid is 10 days. Okay, and unfortunately, if you do have a really serious paratyphoid problem in your loft and it tends to come back and back again, you need to consider vaccinating. But the problem is that there are not really all that many vaccines available. You guys have a new one now that's paratyphoid and paramyxa.
They're not in the same bottle, but but they're both water soluble now. Where before, one was an oil base, one was a water base, and you couldn't mix them. The new ones, you can do them both at the same time.
And most of what we've discussed here, if you go onto the Aviomed website, www.aviomed.co.za, not .com, so .co.za, or just search for Aviomed. Everything that I've said here is basically on that website, and there are very nicely printed programs for the treatment of salmonella, for the correct vaccination of paramyxo, for the treatment of what you should be doing in the molting period and things like that. So a lot of what we're saying here, if the guys do take the trouble and go and look at the website, a lot of this is in the website itself. But so finally, the paratyphoid, at least a 10-day treatment. And a lot of times what we advise is 10 days treatment, and then directly on the 11th day, you then use the paratyphoid vaccine. Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah. So
well,
first,
we learned. Huh?
Yeah.
first 10 days. The reason for that being is that you want to reduce the bacterial load, and you want to actually minimize the amount of paratyphoid organisms in the pigeon's body. And then when you vaccinate it, that it then actually has a good immune response to it. Okay. And very lastly, it's absolutely useless to use a paratyphoid vaccine once. You've got it. That's the one vaccine you have to do a booster vaccination 2 weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks later. Okay. So you're wasting your money to do a one-off paratyphoid vaccine. It's a bacterial vaccine, and they have to have a booster vaccine as well.
Well, this is a question we've had already.
Best treatment for one-eye cold.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to come, if I may, then, Gina, because I think Jerry touched on it and Gina touched on it, and I just spoke very fleetingly about the fact that we sometimes get a disease where antibiotics are used 10, 20 years ago, and for some reason or another, that antibiotic becomes difficult to come by, or the company that makes the antibiotic discontinues it because it was an antibiotic for chickens. And effectively, that's what has happened with mycoplasma, is that the tylosin and the spiromycin and even the mycoban, in some cases, we've had cases where people have treated with those at the right dosage, and they've still been coming back again. And they're not chlamydia, they're not ornithosis, one-eye cold cases. And we realized that we have to go back and look at something completely new, something completely, if I say new, in the sense that it's readily available. And I did a lot of research on a product called lincospectin, which is a combination of lincomycin and spectinomycin. Okay. And it's not that readily available, and it definitely isn't in the Aviomed range of products. And we actually started making that again, and we've just supplied Foys with that. So the lincospectin 20% is available. The beauty with lincospectin is that the bacterial part of the disease of the one eye cold or the slime in the throat, the bacterial part of the disease is really, really well treated with the lincomycin portion of the antibiotic. And the spectinomycin, because it's been less frequently used in the last 12, 15 years, is far more effective now than many of the older antibiotics are. So really, I would suggest to people that have treated with the standard treatments and the pigeons don't respond, is to try the link. And our product is called Lincospecta. So it's basically a combination of lincospectin, and it's available from Foys. I think you've just received it.
Yep, we did.
Yeah, so very, very excited about that product.
And just to repeat what you said earlier, treat all the birds.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt. I mean, there's no sense whatsoever in just treating the ill birds.
Another question.
Another question. Birds with yellow substance in their mouths while experiencing respiratory issues. How do you tell if it's canker or just from respiratory?
Well, it's clinically it's impossible. Okay, it's because you may very often have canker and respiratory along in the same bird, and even sometimes the herpes virus can also basically cause that accumulation of the pus in the throat itself. So the only way to actually say is to actually test whether there is canker there or not, and that's an easy test to do. The others are really difficult tests to do. They have to be done by a laboratory. They have to be very specifically done by a laboratory. The mycoplasma portion is even in a laboratory setting, is difficult to grow, and they're very, very fragile bacteria. So basically, if you don't take the swab and put it onto the growth medium immediately, they often die before you can actually get them to the lab. So there are new PCR tests, the DNA tests. There are new ones being developed, and that will help a lot when they become readily available. But the trichomonas or the crop canker is a pure, simple wet smear that's made. And there are veterinarians that do that. And there are also some lay people that's taught themselves how to actually recognize that under the microscope. But if you don't do the test, you won't know.
As a layperson, the way I explain it, generally speaking, if you have canker in the mouth, you open up the beak and you look sort of like cottage cheese. But if you try to remove it, it's difficult to remove. Usually canker, if you try to pull it out, you're going to see blood. There's another one we call sinusitis. Mm-hmm. Sinusitis is in the mouth, but it's generally on the roof of the mouth or towards the front of the beak. And that's not canker, but a lot of people confuse it. So sinusitis is treated differently. It's in our catalog, and we'll talk about it. But is that, in his particular case, he's talking about a yellow substance. Mm-hmm. And generally sinusitis is crusted in the beak, and it turns almost like a brownish tan color, yeah. Where canker is usually down deep in the throat. Because the reason I mentioned that is, sure, you can go to a vet, but find an avian vet who even wants to bother with pigeons, because it's parrots and canaries. Absolutely. And so it's very hard to find an avian vet who will do anything or understand anything with pigeons. So in trying to explain it, I think I invite you to talk about that, because it's the average person who has pigeons is not going to go to a veterinarian that's going to cost them $100 or $200.
Absolutely true, Jerry, and I think you've really you've put the hammer right on the nail's head, in the sense that everything that you say is
in America it's called nail on the head.
Oh, heck, nail on the head. Okay. You see, as we grow older, we can't even remember what the sayings are. So it's the nail on the head, yeah. So if we can touch on two more things, the wet pox is really important, okay, because you get dry pox, which just is little lesions around the eye or on the skin, and then it can go into the membranes of the throat, and it causes wet pox. So they're very difficult, and they can also look a lot like canker. I agree with you. The sinusitis, which is in the upper part of the beak and has a more brownish color, is a differentiating factor.
And can be removed without any problem. Tomorrow it's back.
Exactly. The other way to do it, of course, is to actually use a really high quality canker product. And normally, if it's a real canker outbreak and the canker is causing these yellow accumulations, that pigeon, if it doesn't have young bird disease, which will wipe out the immune system, that bird will respond very favorably to good canker products. And exactly what you were saying is, be careful to just put all your hope and your trust in ranitidazole. You then would rather go with something that's like the avionidazole, which has got ronidazole and secnidazole combined. So if you're using avionidazole and they're not responding, and the yellow accumulation is not going away, think wet pox, or think possibly sinusitis that looks a bit
definitely
different.
Try something.
Yeah, something else as well.
Other than ronidazole. That's
exactly.
So let me ask a question, because I have I'm sorry for interrupting. Okay. One of the questions we get a lot is, bird gets sick, and if you hold it upside down, the yellow fluid just pour out of it. Discuss that. What could it be, or what might it be?
Normally, it would be a yellow-brown sort of fluid coming out. The reason for that is mostly that either the bird is drinking too much water, or that its crop is not emptying fast enough, that the contractions of the crop is actually not there to actually push the water from the crop into the stomach and into the intestine, into the whole digestive tract. And both of those are actually caused by young bird disease, complicated by paramyxovirus. Because when you've got paramyxovirus, it tends to attack the kidneys. The kidney is the target organ, and the kidney can no longer concentrate the urine. In other words, the urine just tends to, the water that the birds drink, that just tends to run right through, and they just have these splashes of water that they're excreting, which is actually urine. So they have to drink more, but in drinking more, the crop becomes flaccid and it doesn't empty, and so the whole crop just becomes filled up with water. And the circovirus will also attack the crop's lining as such. So it's normally a circovirus combined with paramyxovirus. The one other thing that can cause it also is the disease called Clostridium or red gut. That Clostridium disease will cause severe inflammation in the intestines, and actually sometimes even ulcers and perforated ulcers and blockage of the intestine, so that then the water can't get past the stomach and go into the intestine and be absorbed. And the pigeons are terribly thirsty, so they keep drinking, but it can't pass through. Okay, so a good question.
Gina?
Okay, Yusuf said, I gave my birds the PMV first vaccine 3 months ago. I was unable to do the booster due to being very busy. What should I do now?
So, paramyxovirus, as I said, is more able to develop an immunity with a one-time injection. I'm not for a moment saying you should do only one. You shouldn't do only one. Okay. If it's paratyphoid vaccine, you've got to do the two. If you've done the first vaccine, there should be a baseline immunity, and if you now do a second vaccine, your pigeons should be okay. If you can afford it and you do have the time to spend, it would be the best to actually go back and do two vaccines. In other words, do another one, and 2 weeks later a third vaccine. Okay. The problem with the vaccines, the PMV vaccine, is more so the type of virus that you've got, because we have to understand that paramyxovirus of pigeons is called PMV1, and paramyxovirus of chickens is basically just called paramyxovirus, so that's Newcastle disease. And they're very closely related, but the one actually causes one type of disease in pigeons and the other one causes another type of disease. So my advice is standardly that you use both a vaccine that's specifically made for pigeons, a PMV1, and follow that up with the one that is made for chickens, but never the live vaccine, always the inactivated dead vaccine.
Why don't we take this next question, Gina, and then we'll still allow you to send questions in, but we want to talk about the new product that you have. We want to give you enough time to do that. So we'll take Harpreet's question.
What can we use for E. coli? Can mix mycoban and bromhexine both together?
Okay, so great question. Okay, so E. coli is one of the other very difficult bacteria because, again, it's a bacteria that's generally prevalent in any animal. And in some animals, when the immunity actually drops, those bacteria just tend to flourish, and the good bacteria can no longer grow enough to actually suppress the E. coli. You do get some E. coli that are very pathogenic. We call it pathogenic. In other words, they're very, very strong and they will cause a lot of disease very quickly. Okay, so you've got these two scenarios. It's either the one that's already in the pigeon and that's just sitting there waiting to grow, or that's been contaminating water or food bowls, etc. Or you've got this one that is really highly virulent and that will in itself cause a disease. Okay. It's also a very common secondary bacteria. So the moment you've got respiratory disease, especially mycoplasma, it tends to get secondarily infected with E. coli. Okay, the mycoban has a very good antibiotic for E. coli, in the sense of trimethoprim, which is the specific one that we've added in for the E. coli. If you've got a particular E. coli problem, I would go with a broader spectrum, such as the typhoid cure, or basically the new linkaspectin that we're bringing back. That spectinomycin also has a really good effect on the E. coli.
Can the mycoban and the bromhexine
be absolutely? Yeah, they work very, very, very well. Again, literally speaking, you can use bromhexine with any respiratory antibiotic. But there is a very definitive contraindication. You should never use bromhexine with any antibiotic that's got furazolidone or furaltidone. That's a contraindication. They actually become ill from that.
And that's mentioned in our catalog.
So typhoid cure and bromhexine never together, but any good respiratory antibiotic combined with bromhexine. To do yourselves a favor, if you've got racing pigeons, it's not that important in the fancy pigeons. But if you've got racing pigeons and you see your pigeons are starting to go out of form, give them some good antibiotic, respiratory antibiotic, and add bromhexine. And also, something that works exceptionally well is to add bromhexine to the basketing water, the evening of basketing, because that protects them.
Means in American is bath.
No, the basketing.
See what I mean? I don't wear my hair.
Basketing.
So the water that they get just before they basket it, you add some bromhexine to that, and that'll stop them, protect them from getting infected with the viruses because of what we've explained.
Okay, so let's go to your new product.
Yeah.
Well, of course, one of the things we should say is even though the show is from 3 to 4, we'll always start late and have to go late. Okay. So we can go from 4 to 4:15 if we have to.
Whatever, yeah. So you want me to just say a few words on the link? Yeah. Gina, are you happy with that?
Yes.
Yeah. Right, so the product is called Linka Specta, basically, and it's a Linka Specta 20% because it's a 20% or from the sinuses down to the tongue. That's an indication that you've got respiratory disease. If you basically walk into the loft in the evenings when they're all sleeping and it's quiet and you're hearing the clicking sound or constant sneezing, or when you've got the sinusitis that Jerry was referring to, or when they becoming really critically ill from respiratory mycoplasma, you've got to think about. And that's the first thing you're going to start treatment for, okay? And I would strongly recommend that in cases where they're not responding to the other antibiotics, that they give it a try with a lincospectin, okay? The lincomycin is great for the other bacteria, and the spectinomycin is just wonderful for the mycoplasma specifically. We will be in the next few weeks, months or so, be also launch an improved Lincospecta, which we'll call Lincospecta Plus, which has some other unique characteristics. But the moment it's available, we'll let you know about that. Okay.
Is there anything you would like to say? You can, if you'd like to compliment Foys or Jerry. About Gina. You don't have to talk about me, but
you know, Jerry, I wanted to start off to say how much I love you and how special you've been in my life. But I mean, that beside the point. To me, the important thing is that I think we need to compliment and really thank the girls. And if I say the girls, I think it's a full team, you know. And I'd like to start with my wife, in the sense that, as I say, she's
was
really,
here a moment ago.
Yeah, so we'll call her in to come and sit here for a second. But as I say, she's literally run the company. She's literally been the force and the driving force behind the company. And she's had to sit up with all my moods and all my craziness, because every now and again I want to develop a new thing. And she says, not now, just hang on a little bit. Let's do this or that. And then on the Foys side, we started off with Foys when we established Aviomed, and we've never had one day of regret about that. They are our sole distributors, our sole importers. We've had so many people that have asked us to actually, can't they buy our products direct, that have asked, can't they have an agency? And we just come back to the answer again. Why do you want to give it to anybody else as well if Foys is doing such an amazing job? So to Gina, to Vicky, to Victoria, to every single one of you guys at the company. And it's not an easy business to do. I mean, you guys have got to realize they've got to fly the products here from far, far away in darkest of Africa. And there's a lot of things to consider for the products to get here. And also I want to apologize from my side if we sometimes out of stock of products. That happens, and the reason is not that we don't try and get the products made. The reason is you've got to understand that some of the pigeon products specifically have raw materials or active ingredients that are very, very difficult to come by. And a case in point is ronidazole, for instance. There is just one company in the world that makes a high quality ronidazole. There's a lot of companies that claim to make ranitazole. And I want to also caution people on that. If you're using ranitazole and it's not working as it should, maybe it's time to change your brand, because there are ranitazole and they're ranitazole, and we will not use low quality ranitazole if we can't get it from our company that we know and we trust and that we believe in. We will rather be out of stock of it than put something else in there. So it's a difficult business to run, and sometimes we don't have the stock, and it's really, I think, very, very seldom it's a case of Foys being out of stock because they didn't order in time or they didn't have the product or whatever. We take more of the blame, but we know why it happens. Okay, so yeah, Jerry, I think you've got an amazing team here. And what you've accomplished in America and worldwide is just incredible. So
My head is big. We were talking about Gina's head being big.
No, he said mine wasn't.
Yeah. But maybe Sana, you want to say a few words
I just
about?
want to say thank you to everybody that uses the Aviomed products. We really do try to go through a lot of trouble and a lot of shipping hassles to get everything here. And thanks to everybody at Foys that supports us and has supported us through the past few years. We really appreciate the business. And we want to try and bring in a few new products within the next few months. But as we go, we will ask Foys on this video, how can I say, pronounce it, to let everybody know if they do arrive here and if they have any questions about it, they will contact us and let you know what the answers will be on that. But thank you.
Thank you.
Gina, maybe I can ask one question and just find out if it's possible to do. As you know, and many of you may be aware, I've lectured all over the world on pigeon diseases, and we've got some really amazing videos that I've shot at these lectures and that we've taped at the lectures. Would it be possible to take little excerpts of those and maybe just run 5 minutes at the end of each show, or at the beginning, just so that and pull out some of those, and even for me to send you some visual material when we launch a new product so that we can properly introduce the product,
Absolutely.
So I think that's something we can really look at and work on, so
You don't really have to do that on the live show. You can also run it on Facebook as just an add-in or something
Yeah.
like that.
And our website
And
also.
on the website
Yeah.
you can do that. So you don't have to do it on the live show.
Yeah. Like she'll take pictures up and put them up while we're talking. She had a picture of the
That's
Lincoln
really good
Spectre
Okay,
while we were
wonderful.
talking about
Okay,
it.
great.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Okay. So
But it's been an absolute honor to be here. It's been just incredible. So I want to brag. My daughter won the Grand National Championship at Louisville. She had the best 4-year-old horse.
3-year-old.
3-year-old horse, the World Championship. So well done, Cola. Go for it. And we're very, very proud.
Gina, take that last question and then we'll close it down.
Yeah.
Any preventative steps for young bird show team prior to first show for Adeno?
Okay, so I think the most important thing is that a young bird needs to be vaccinated correctly. And I may be wrong, but I think that is something that may be lacking in the show pigeon industry, in the sense that people discount the importance of correct paramyxo vaccine vaccination. As I explained very briefly, is that if your pigeon has a basic immunity against paramyxo, it can still survive the disease and it can still look normal, but it's never going to be a good breeding pigeon, and it's going to be at the show for a half a day and then start developing diarrhea and water, and it's not actually diarrhea, watery stool, and etc. So you need to vaccinate your pigeons correctly. That's hugely important. And then we've got a breeding program, young bird breeding program on this website. I think it's hugely important that people actually do follow that breeding program or the young bird program, and make sure that when they're taking those birds to the show, that those birds are at the top of their form, of their health form, that they as healthy as they possibly can be. And then I would definitively say, if you can take your birds to the show before you go, if you use the combination of Aviogel and Introimmune, which is truly, and I haven't got time now to go into the specifics why, but I do not believe that there is any combination that is anywhere near that combination. It supports the good bacteria. It's got the very specific immune stimulant in there. It's got toxin binding salts, which actually binds the mycotoxins that they may get in the grain when they don't feed their own grain. So it's got a multitude of things that actually help those birds to actually survive the show period. Because let's be honest, the show period for a young pigeon is a really, really difficult period. And there I've got to be shown up as being so guilty. And Jerry, I want to apologize because Jerry has been asking me for 10 years or 8 years now for a pre-show pack that we can actually supply to the guys when they're taking their pigeons to the show, and also during the show period. Okay, and
you have been guilty on that. I know that. You've mentioned it to me also. So Jerry, put it on the list for tomorrow's meeting.
So it's in the open now, and now I'm forced to go and work on it, and I'll do my utmost to have it available by the show period.
And the Intramune goes on the feed,
the Intramune and the Aviogel goes on the feed, and I really just want to say 5 words about the food application of products. We really, as a company, Aviomed, we don't try and be difficult in saying people should add something to the food. If we say that it should be added to the food only, there's a very distinct reason for it. And the main reason is that many of the things that people add to the drinking water are completely water insoluble, and that just literally leaches out to the bottom of the food, of the water. And so in the end, if you're not stirring that water every 15 or 20 minutes, the birds never get what they should be getting. Okay. We've just, with the Liquor Spectre Plus, we've come up with a formulation that actually causes a bubbling of the product and actually disperses it into the drinking water at a better rate. But again, it's just some of the materials that will do that. Some of the others that are in Intramune, you can't. You've got to put it over the food. And then also very, very importantly is specifically on Intramune and Aviogel, if you're putting it over the food, it literally actually adheres to the food, and when it gets to the crop, it slowly dissolves around the food and gets much higher levels in the crop and in the intestine. So there's a reason for food administration. I know it's often very much more difficult, and we're constantly working to innovate, and we're really excited about the new product that I don't want to talk about now, but we're really innovating to get water-soluble products. But if it says food administration, there's a reason for it.
Okay. All right. Did you have anything else, Sana?
Not really. The Aviogel is, when you mix it with the water as it's indicated, you will see it will make a gel. And if you add it to the food then and add the Intramune afterwards, I think it's a better way of doing it than put the Intramune first and then mix it with the gel then afterwards, because also the powder will go down.
Right.
So as you mix it, so I think mix the Aviogel first and then afterwards the Intramune. So I think that might be
absolutely
a better explanation for it.
The beauty with Aviogel is that it's a lot of people use oil, and they use vitamin B12 syrup, and they use anything with honey or whatever, but nothing sticks like Aviogel. It really, and the beauty is that once you've mixed the Aviogel and you add whatever you're adding to the food, or you add the Aviogel, the powder to the Aviogel once it's been made up, it really actually adheres to that food. And the beauty is 20 minutes later it's dry,
but it's
still there. You can literally see all the little material still sitting on, and it's not dropping off. If you look at any food administration of food that you've done with oil or whatever, go and look at your bowls after feeding troughs afterwards, and you'll see how much is actually lying on the trough. And then, of course, the Aviogel has 2 major advantages. It's got apple cider vinegar, which is a fantastic immune stimulant and gut protectant, and then it's got grapefruit seed extract, which is not grape extract, it's grapefruit seed extract, and that specifically has an immune boosting effect, a fantastic. So it's not just an adherent; it's got the advantages of having those other 2 as well.
Yeah, I think that is about it. Look at that last one. You want to check it out?
Repeat the Avio products for adeno, please.
Okay, right. So the question is, repeat the Avio products for the adenovirus. Okay. I'm saying that Mycoban has got an antibiotic for, sorry, the Mycoban has got an antibiotic for E. coli. And basically, adenovirus is not a treatable disease because it's a virus. You can't treat the disease, so you need to stimulate the immune system. So I'm saying you've got to do the correct paramyxo vaccine. You've got to use your Aviogel Intramune as an immune stimulant. And then if the birds have secondary infections, when they start dying and they're becoming ill with the disease, the best possible treatment then would basically be your YBD cure product. Okay, it's called YBD cure. And there are 3 different antibiotics in there that's specifically indicated for the E. coli, which is normally the secondary infection of the adenovirus. So it's basically correct vaccination, Aviogel and Intramune, and then YBD cure if you've got the adenovirus, E. coli type and young bird disease especially combined with it. Very, very seldom these days do you get adenovirus as the only disease. It's normally a result again of circovirus that's knocking out the immune system. Okay, so your immunity is the most important.
Jerry, do you have anything before we close?
No.
Okay. So our next show will be next Friday the 6th. We will have an auction next week. We'll have the birds online on Monday if Jerry gets it together. Um, so auction and Facebook Live next Friday. If you have any questions, anything you want to see us do the show about, just contact myself or Jerry, 724-843-6889. Thank you, Dr. Botha and Sana, for being our guests today.
Gina, would you mention this show will be on our website in a very short, because a lot of people might have missed part of it.
Okay, so we do put the show, once we're done recording it, is on the on our Facebook, it's on YouTube, and it's also on our website. So you can rewatch it, whatever you missed. And it will always be on there along with all of our other shows.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a great holiday weekend.